Welcome to the Code 4 Couples podcast, focusing on topics for law enforcement officers and couples to keep you and your relationship connected, resilient, and Code 4. Now, your host, law enforcement expert Cindy Doyle, author of Hold the Line, and my wife.
Hey there, and welcome back to Code 4 Couples. I'm your host, Cindy Doyle, author of Hold the Line and licensed professional counselor. And what else am I? I'm a law enforcement spouse. Yeah, there we go. We got it all in there. Today, we're going to talk about kids. We're going to talk about the impact on kids in law enforcement families. And this is a topic that I have a hard time finding people to talk about. And being someone who doesn't have children, wasn't able to have children, I don't have the experience to say hey, this is how it impacted my kids. So there's a few people that I've had on in the past to talk about kids, but I've had a hard time finding a clinician to talk about kids. So today I have on Brianna Reinhold, who not only is a clinician, but she is actually a law enforcement kid. So I think this is going to be a fantastic conversation with her. Let me tell you a little bit about Brianna before I have her say hello. There we
Hi.
go. She grew up in a family deeply connected to law enforcement and first responders, where she was exposed early to the emotional and psychological toll of public safety work, giving her a very unique perspective on the challenges faced by those in public safety. Her initial professional experience was as a detention officer at the Glendale Police Department, where she took advantage of the opportunity to volunteer as peer support. Prior to earning her master's degree, her professional journey took her to the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections, where she worked with youth facing a variety of challenges, including sexualized behavior, substance abuse, severe mental health issues, and violent behaviors. She is the founder and clinical director of Northern Lights Therapy, where she focuses on addressing trauma and working with first responders. And she shares her knowledge as well as her experience as a child of a first responder family. So Brianna, thank you very much for filling out a form and saying, hey, I'll come talk about this.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here for sure.
When you think about your journey as a family, we have a lot of people that are concerned about what the impact is on their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And right before we started recording, you were like, it's kind of like a preacher's kid in a way. There's an impact that people don't always know. You're a little bit different. I know in the South, I don't know, maybe they call them everywhere, like PKs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's an acronym for first responder kids. But, coming up in that family, I assume I know you had one parent that was a first responder, but did you have two? Did you have
My entire family. So it goes from my dad was a SWAT negotiator and homicide detective. And then he was in charge of training for weapons qualifications. My mom was a dispatcher. She was an officer before that. My stepdad was a motor corporal. My uncle was a sergeant. I've got cousins who are military and first responders. I've got firefighter captains in my family. I mean, you name it. We've pretty much hit every aspect of law enforcement and first responder community. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was a lifestyle.
It was. It was.
And you didn't grow up knowing anything different. That's what I think is interesting in a way. People are like, what is it like to be married to a first responder or a law enforcement officer? I'm like, I haven't had another marriage, so I don't really know anything different. So as a kid, what are some of the stories that you heard growing up? Probably looking back now, you're like, maybe something I didn't need to know. I don't know.
There was lots I should have never been told. While now looking back, I'm really grateful because it helped me shape me into who I am now. As a kid, I really should not have heard probably a good chunk of the stuff that I heard. Some of it was my parents trying to protect me, right? I was the firstborn and a girl. So it was like my dad being SWAT and homicide saw everything that was worst of the worst. So I got the brunt of having to be a little bit more restricted on what I could do and protected because the world's not the greatest out there. But I had no idea what it was like to not be in the first responder world at all. One of my favorite memories, though, was at around 8-ish, I would sit down at home. We had our big box TV and my dad would bring home, the VHS tapes from when he would do his interviews. And he'd watch them with his case file out on the floor, and I'd watch them with him out of pure curiosity. I never had this grotesque thing to it, but it was like, Daddy, why? Why did they kill this person? Why did they do what they did? And that why piece stuck with me for my entire life, and it still
Mm.
has. So it was good and it was bad. I don't regret it at all because I learned from it.
Yeah, good in the sense that it opened your world up in a way to say like, hey, there's bad things out there, bad because there was some restriction. And at the same time, I could say, well, maybe that was good too.
Mhm.
And you said your dad was a SWAT.
SWAT negotiator and a
That's
homicide
what I thought
detective.
you said. You said
Yeah.
negotiator too.
Yep.
So how did that impact you as a kid to know that like, I mean, I understand like, hey, we need to take separate cars because dad's on call, or there could be something going on and he needs to go. And how did that impact you to know that he was on SWAT and a hostage negotiator? I'm curious about that because that feels more intense
Mhm.
than maybe just being on the street.
So my parents divorced when I was 10. Love them both to death, but they two complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So I became kind of responsible for helping to raise my younger brother. We're about 5 years
Mm,
age difference. And so when you talk about having two different vehicles, all of that, we couldn't because when I was with time with my dad, it was just the three of us. So we had
mm,
to have plans in place to where, and there was times it would happen. We'd go to the grocery store and we had it set up to where if he looked at me and just goes, "Hey, I'll see you later," I knew I had to leave the cart, grab my brother, and we'd meet out at the truck because he ran into somebody that was a suspect or somebody he had dealt with out on the streets or during an interview. And so we had that in place. And there were times we left full grocery carts at the grocery store because he had seen somebody that he didn't want to see us. And so we would go and leave and wait. Holidays, I don't know until I became a grown adult what actual holidays looked like, not on a random day, but on the actual like holiday that it was scheduled for. My dad would get called out at 2, 3 in the morning regularly, and he'd come and wake me up and he's like, "Hey, I got to go in, get you and your brother off to school." And it was part of my life. I really didn't
yeah.
know any different. The fear was absolutely there because I didn't know what was happening. I just knew that that was my dad's job, and I always held on to the hope that he would come home and I was going to take care of the things that I needed to take care of till he got there.
When you think about the impact that the career has on, I'm going to say law enforcement kids, but first
Mhm.
responder kids, but law enforcement in general, as a clinician, what impact do you see that it either had on you or it has on kids?
It made me jaded a whole lot faster than I probably ever should have been. I know the job will make most people become a little bit more cynical. That dark humor is there. You start to see more of the negative, so you forget that there's positive out there. And so growing up, I was for sure that kid that saw more of the negative in the world, but it also made me a little less scared. I was a little bit
Mm,
more adrenaline seeking because I was hearing so much stuff that the tame things didn't do it for me. So I wanted to kind of always step it up a notch. So I think that in the long run, it prepared me better being a female to keep myself safe, to be more aware of my surroundings. I don't go out into places that I know are probably not the greatest place to be. I don't have my head in the sand. But at the same time, I think it's also kept me from doing some things because of that fear of what could happen, because I've heard stories throughout my life growing up of things that did happen to people, especially being
yeah.
female. I think it just adds a whole nother layer to it.
I'm surprised at that answer actually, but I'm glad you said that it made you a little bit more adrenaline seeking, a little bit more aware. You said that you had fear but hope. Like
Hmm.
there's a reality there, but then
Hmm.
hope that things would be okay. I think what I hear a lot of times from parents is that there's an increased anxiety level in kids. And I didn't know if you see, I mean, different people handle different things
Hmm.
differently. Kids are going to handle things differently. And I think that probably comes around to parenting, which we'll talk about in a little bit about it. I also wonder too how social media, how YouTube has affected some of that for the kids now.
Hmm.
I know of a couple stories where officers or spouses tried to keep video away from the kids after being in an incident, and they go to school and they're like, oh my gosh, look at what your dad did or what your mom did. And they're bam, right there, they're being shown what their parents were trying to avoid at school. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on some of that and how the impact maybe has changed over the years?
I'm really grateful I was raised in the generation period I've raised in. I am very anti social media for kids and cell phones. That's a whole nother soapbox I can go off on for hours and hours and
Yeah,
hours.
because I didn't cover, but you're a mom.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
mom. I also worked with a lot of sex offenders for a long time. So
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of the darker side growing up, just the way the things are. There's no reason 8-year-olds and 12-year-olds needs full-blown cell phones right now. So I think that adds to it though. And that's why I'll go on that kick, because it's giving them easier access to things that they don't need to be having.
Yes.
You know, there's that whole thing of if somebody was to get hurt, they need to be called by a loved one or have an officer respond to their house, not find out on social media that there was a bad car accident that your mom passed. And I think
Mhm.
social media is giving kids too much information without the right ability to discuss it, process it, and get true facts. You know, social media, we all see that. The videos that are out there are not from the very start. It's just when somebody happens to see something going on. So you don't get the whole front half of that story. So I think the kids that are watching their parents on social media videos aren't even seeing the whole thing. So they're going to have a skewed view of what their parent did. And then they're going to want to fit in. I think for most first responder kids, and I know personally I was the same way, I was an outcast simply because of what my parents did. It had nothing to do, I mean, I was my own weird kid, but just the fact that I was a cop's kid, I was automatically going to be viewed as I was the snitch, I was this, I was somebody not to be trusted because, oh, well, they're just going to go and rat you out if we have a party. So I almost went the opposite direction to prove myself that I wasn't going to be that snitch person. Now, everything's out there for everybody to see. So it's harder to get away with stuff, but easier for your parents. So I think kids are just in a different generation now than they once were. But I think the anxiety is there more now because of that constant push of information. I wouldn't know if
Mm.
something happened to my parents until they came home. I wouldn't even know the type of call they were on unless they told me. I could have
Yeah.
watched the news with my parents at 10 o'clock at night and they'd been like, oh, yeah, in Glendale, this happened. And I would have no idea that that was the call my dad was on because it wasn't blasted out there. And now it's constantly pushed out there. And so I think the anxiety and the fear is there because kids are seeing it 24/7 pumped around and they don't know if their parents are safe. And then add in the massive hatred towards cops that have kicked up over the recent, especially in 2020. I've got good friends that their spouses or their dads are cops and they were terrified for their dad to go to work every day. So I think the generational shift, the technology shift has really transformed that and increased the overall anxiety and fear for all kids, let alone for the first responder kids as well.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. And you hit something I was going to ask next about.
Mhm.
So I love that you did it, which was as a kid at school whose parent or parents are in law enforcement, what is that like? And the fact that you were like a little ostracized or a little on the
Oh,
outside
yeah.
or a little on the edge. It's not like, oh, this is cool. No, you're seen as something else.
Hmm.
So, and the technology impacting the kids the way they are now,
Hmm.
and it makes it a little different than when you were
Hmm.
growing up. So, how do parents start to, I'm going to go a different word, like protect but nurture, help kids to be aware? Like, there's no perfect parenting, right? Every kid is different. But what are some of the ways that parents can talk to their kids about what they do and maybe address some of their concerns?
Honestly, your biggest thing right there is using the word talk.
Mm,
Talking to your kids. Having worked with juvenile sex offenders for a long time, I can have conversations with teenagers that most people look at me like I have 6 heads because there's no way that that naturally should come out to talk to teenagers. My own kids, though, I still will have struggles to talk about certain topics because when they're your kids, you hold them to just a little bit different of like wanting to protect.
yeah.
When we don't talk to our kids, though, we make that topic taboo right off the bat. And even if it's not a taboo topic, when we're not talking about it, our kids may feel like we're not allowed to bring it up. Also, we don't want to upset our parents more. They're coming home from a lot of really busy work. They're coming home from dealing with a lot of really horrific calls, or maybe people wanting to fight them, pulling guns on them, who knows? The last thing I ever wanted to do was ask my parents something that could have upset them or hurt their feelings even more. So I tended to keep myself quiet when things came up that I had heard about or saw because I didn't want to make it worse for them. I absolutely was a people pleaser. And then when you add into it that, you know, My dad was not the most emotionally available. Definitely the true old school cop mentality of you don't talk about it, you don't show your emotions, you just kind of drown it out. My mom was the complete opposite. She was, let's talk about every emotion under the sun. And so when you try and have this balance of not knowing how to regulate your emotions, two people that don't know how to regulate, there's not really a great way to learn and help each other grow. So if you're the spouse of a first responder or you are the first responder, just sitting down and actually opening up that conversation door from as early as possible. I don't care if your kid's 5 years old, start talking to them. There is some amazing children's books out there that are written for introducing what my daddy does as a cop or what my mommy does as a firefighter. And it just introduces the job in very appropriate language-based wording to these kids, helping them really see what does my job entail. And at 5 years old, 6 years old, you want to show them more of the positives. Daddy gets to go and help people. Mommy gets to go and help save lives or whatever the case may be. As they get older, you still have those conversations and you just make it age appropriate and dive in a little bit more. There's not always good people out there. So sometimes I have to go and help out when a good person is getting hurt by a bad person. Or, that's a great way to introduce laws. We talk about house rules. We need to talk about laws with our kids. So you can do that in conversation of what does daddy and mommy's job look like? Well, here's what laws are like. So again, age appropriate wording, language, and you just keep bringing it up. It makes it less taboo. Then when your kid is now a teenager, these conversations have been going for 10 plus years. They feel normal and comfortable coming to talk to you because you've brought up stuff. Or if there was a critical incident, don't not talk to your kid about it. Ignoring it is not going to help them. It's going to make them feel like they have to shut down their own emotions too. So you need to talk to them about critical incidences. If you don't know how to, granted, I am a therapist, so I will always push this, but I really think every person on this planet needs to have a therapist, especially first responders. Even if you're not massively dealing with something in the moment. I have some that come to me once a month. They dump their calls on me for that month, so they're good, and then they leave. I have some that are trying to figure out how do I talk to my kids about what I do. So they'll come and talk to me, and we role play it of how to interact with that particular kid because of how they are, their personality, whatever. Some are softer, some are harder, so you can be a little bit more upfront. Some you have to be a little bit more timid with, but you have to talk. That's the first and foremost, because if you don't, it's never going to help anything anyways.
So the biggest thing is to talk. I wrote
Mhm.
so much down, so I'm just going to summarize some of that.
Okay.
And by the way, guys, if you're thinking about this and listening to Brianna as she's talking, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to refer back to this. I will have it in a blog post. And so all you have to do is click the show notes on your device because you're probably on your device. And so just click the notes below and it'll click it to the blog. So you will have all of this and you can talk about it or refer back to it in the way it does. So talk about it. The first thing you said is don't make it taboo. I
Mhm.
love that. So it's like, don't make it taboo, but make it age appropriate.
Mhm.
Those were the two things
Yep.
that I heard a lot of. Also heard like watch for kids being quiet because you said I didn't want to put more on their plate. So watch for them being quiet because that might mean it needs a conversation. I'll get books later or I will look for them and I'll put them down below as
Yeah,
well.
I
But
can send you a list of some of the books that I'll refer to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. Send me a list
Mhm.
and I'll drop it down there. Or, guys, if you want the list sent to you, I can do that as well. I loved the idea of mommy and dad help people. I
Mhm.
like that, right? Not everybody's good. I loved relating the house rules to law.
Mhm.
I have never heard that before. I'm like,
Yeah.
that is so good.
Mhm.
Like, there's punishment that comes with the law. But then you're right. Like, as you lay that foundation, then people are naturally, the kids are naturally, as a teen, going to say, like, yeah, this is stuff we talk about. And if I
Mhm.
have concerns, I can bring it up. Or if, yeah, it lays that foundation to have those conversations.
Mhm.
And those are the most important parts when we're talking about the kids, of the conversations themselves. I know a lot of people worry about what to share on a critical incident. And
Mhm.
like you and I mentioned, the idea of social media or media at
Mhm.
all, the judgment of the public, which then also trickles down to school or teachers, even
Mhm.
sometimes. What are ways or what's information that kids need to know and that maybe need to not be shared? Or is it all on the table and let them ask questions.
I think it's all on the table anymore. I think media and social media has taken our ability away to censor some of it or say, hey,
Mhm.
let's not go down certain avenues because we may not get that choice if it's blasted out there because somebody did get a chance to record it and put it out there for the world to see. So I think everything needs to be on the table. I think starting with instead of just coming at them and telling them what happened, maybe
Mm.
actually asking them, hey, have you heard about this first? Asking them what their interpretations are if they've seen videos, what their thoughts are, what have your friends been saying about it? What are your thoughts about it? And then sharing more factual based. Facts are always going to be your best friend because that's what actually had happened. You don't need to
Mhm.
go into the nitty gritty of it was a foot pursuit that turned into this, that turned into this. It can just be, something that happened that they didn't want to follow the rules and they tried to run from us and we had to chase after them. You can condense it and keep it factual. And then checking in, you should always end with the emotional piece. So it's almost going to be, excuse me, like a debriefing with your own kids. And you're looking at it from that perspective of tell me your things. What did you experience first? What are your thoughts and your emotions? Okay, here's the facts that it happened. All right, let's really dive in now to the emotions. And I think it's important if you were involved in the critical incident to also share with your kids your emotions during the incident. Because and I don't know how many times I can say this, if a teen boy hears their big, tough cop dad say, hey,
Mhm.
I was really scared in that moment and I didn't know what was going to happen. You just set the foundation for that teenage boy to know that it's okay to admit that they were scared. And you're showing them that they don't have to be seen as weak because they were, speaking up about it, or I was strong, so I can't say that I was scared. You can absolutely be strong and be scared at the same time. So I think that doesn't just give the kid a chance to understand what was happening, but it's laying a lifetime of foundational things that kids need to hear from their parents. It's not just what the kid felt, but what was their parent experiencing because they're going to learn in that moment from them.
That is so important. When you said that, I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
yes." The idea that if the parent can say something in the sense of like, "You know what? My heart was racing, I was pounding, I was scared, and it was scary in the moment, and I knew that I could rely on my training," or, "I knew it was important to come home to you guys, so I did everything possible, but it was scary."
Mhm.
Right? And so I love the fact that the parents, either the first responder or other, right?
Mhm.
The spouse, if you're both first responders too. But in sharing that emotion, it allows the emotion to come out and it doesn't have to be stuffed and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to drive what's going on
Mhm.
and moving it from there into, and I'm home with you,
Mhm.
something of that nature. I
Absolutely.
loved, so I hope y'all heard that really the idea of doing a family debriefing
Mhm.
after a critical incident is really gonna be important, and maybe even what to do now that it's happened, because
Mhm.
sometimes, unfortunately, press, people in your yard, potential threats, those types of things, doing some kind of like, "And here's what we need to do."
Mhm.
I will also link some debriefing material down below, guys, so you can access that if you need to, but that was a really simple layout
Mhm.
of how to do that. I loved that. That
Thank
is
you.
great. I know parents are going to be concerned about potentially adding like secondary traumatic stress or some kind of trauma to their children in throughout their career or as a part of like critical incidents.
Mhm.
What kind of advice or recommendations or thoughts do you have about that for parents?
I would ask the parent to check in with themselves first of why they have that fear.
Tell me about that.
If your kid ever will have access to the world by talking to people, by
Mm,
getting on a cell phone, by getting on their computer, they're going to have exposure to secondary trauma. So, why are you afraid that by having conversations, you're doing more harm than good? You're actually doing more good because you're talking about it and giving them an outlet to process what they're having thrown at them than just them watching something on their phone, trying to navigate it themselves with a brain that is not developed yet, and then sending them back on their way. That's the problem we've had. So having worked with sexual abusers for a long time, the topic of porn with teens would come up a lot with me when I worked with parents. And I had one mom that legit came into my office. She goes, well, I don't want you to talk to my son about porn. And I said, your son is 15. And she goes, yeah, but if you don't tell him about porn, he's not going to know that it's there. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I'm sorry to tell you this, but he's 15. He already knows what porn is, where to access, whether he watches it or not is a different thing, but he already knows it's there. And she was completely convinced that her son does not know because it's never been said about it around him to her knowledge. That type of a mentality is actually going to stunt her son on growing in a healthy manner because not talking about it is going to make his brain go to the most crazy thought process you can ever go to. Our brain is always going to make up the worst case scenario. So if we never give them a direction to go, how are we going to expect them to stay in a tame state? So the idea of giving them secondary trauma from your career, no, you're showing them what the real world is. You need to be mindful as a parent that you're not constantly negative, because if you're never talking about the good in the world, then your kids are not going to know to look for the good in the world. But just by talking about things that do happen, being real, talking about news stories that have some emphasis and learning things from it, those are all going to be good things. They're not going to do secondary trauma. It's actually going to help build their resiliency that later on down the line, they're less likely to develop things like PTSD because they've built up the resiliency factor growing up while their brain was still forming.
It's kind of that idea of like, you have to let kids fail and fall down so they know that they can get back up. Right? It's the same kind of thing. Kids know bad stuff is out there. They see it all the time. They see it everywhere. But when you're bringing it up and you're talking about it, it gives them an outlet. It allows them a place of, how do I process these emotions? How do we talk about it? I love that you mentioned, because I was going to say it if you didn't, we come up with negative stories, right? The stories, when we don't have facts, we come up with negative stories. We don't go like, we don't have facts. We haven't heard from that person. You know what? They're probably on a fabulous vacation in Alaska. Like, we don't say,
Yep.
we're like, they're dead on the side of the road. So helping them to get the facts, process their fears, and it gives their brain a foundation for how to work through it. That was such a great answer. It was interesting that you were like, well, why are they scared? And I'm like, because they don't know. And you were like, let me lay this all out for you. I love that so much. What are some things that parents need to do to take care of themselves, whether they're the first responder or the supportive parent? You already mentioned one thing, which is why I was going to go here, which you said is don't stay in the negative all the time. Like, you have to help them see the positive in the world too, not just the negative. So that's obviously one, like maybe gratitude, those kinds of things. What are other ways that parents need to take care of themselves?
I think it becomes a whole family thing. I mean, if you want to break it down, I think everybody within the family, there's different levels to it. You need to have family time, which is family self-care. And then you need to have the couple. So the married couple or just the partners need to have their time together. And then you need to have time for the kids to go have fun doing things that make them happy. And then you need to have, everybody individually as well. And so I think it's making sure that everybody's needs are getting met in some way, shape, or form, and whatever that looks like. A lot of times, and I know you do all the couple stuff, so love language is a really big topic that people will bring up. There's a whole book on it for parents with their kids. There's one on it when it comes down to self-love, so how to do your own self-care. I recommend that to everybody. Figure out what your kids like in terms of their love languages. Figure out what yourself is, and then make sure that you're feeding into that in all aspects. Talking about things is the best way to kind of process and learn what's going on, and then having time to reconnect with nature, getting out and getting some vitamin D, putting your feet in the ground are really good ways. I know most first responders don't like to stay in city areas and like to try and escape away from kind of everything. So when you can, get out, even if it's for a day, go for a drive. Plan things at random when you're able to. I know holidays, sometimes off-duty work, all of those things start to come up. Don't live your life to work, though, because if you have the money and never enjoy it, what was all of that work for? So finding a good balance, finding people that you can relate to, that you can go out and have fun with. Don't talk about work when you're doing family stuff. I don't care if you have a big case coming up, a big trial, or you're trying to do something or off duty. Try and have that be a rule. If you're partners and you guys are both first responders or just one of you, have that be off the table on date nights. No work talk. because you
Mm.
need to give your brain a chance to just reset and not focus on everything that job comes with.
When you think of anything that maybe you would have liked to have differently as a kid in your experience, what would you have different? What would you recommend?
I would have loved my dad to be more emotionally available when I was growing up. He's getting there now. It's been a lot of hard work, but not having that relationship at that time growing up, I would have liked more because I never felt I could go talk to him. So when stuff did come up at work or I knew of things, he was one that you could not go talk to. We were pretty good about family time. My parents did really well at co-parenting, so I lucked out with that and off duty. Neither of them worked all the time when they had us, which was a really good thing. I think it would just be more getting away and just having more of that emotional connection is what I really feel like I missed out on with my dad. My mom, I mean, she would talk my ear off, so I didn't really want to talk to her as a teenager. So it was like what I wanted as a teen is different than now looking back at what I wanted. I think I was okay growing up. But yeah, it was just more of that close connection. I wish I would have gotten to start earlier in my life than I'm waiting until I was an adult to get with my parents.
Throughout the whole interview today, throughout our conversation, what I'm left with is a lot of what you're saying right now. That regular connection, whether that's through conversation, whether that's through hugs, whether that's time spent,
Mhm.
whether that's thinking of things differently, like harnessing emotions or time are really important. Keeping those channels of communication open. It's the relationship with the kids that really will make them healthier human beings in the long
Absolutely.
run.
Mhm.
And that's what I feel like a lot of your messages today is keep that connection. And there's elements of the connection you need to have
Mhm.
in order for the kids to be healthy and move forward. So,
I think too
yeah.
many people in this line of work, especially the males, I'm going to go stereotypical on this one. They're still stuck in that I can't show emotions. I need
Mhm.
to be strong for my kids, all of that. Break down in front of your kids. I think I had the most vulnerable conversations on like the 2 occasions I watched my dad cry when I was younger. Now he'll cry and it's natural. It's not something that's forced. I want people in this line of work to not try and shield their kids. You're doing more harm to your kids than good by just not talking. You're not there to buy them things all the time that you need to go work all of this off duty. They want you. They want you to be around. They want to make memories. They want to have all of that. They want you to last. And the burnout in this job, the not just the physical burnout, but the mental burnout that this job can take, it can cost you your relationship with your kids and eventually your grandkids if that happens. And if people can start, especially when their kids are younger, or now, I don't care if your kids are grown adults now, but start trying to have those conversations, it will not only help your kids, it'll help you too. It'll help keep your blood pressure lower. It'll help your cortisol stay lower because you're having these meaningful connections and you're regulating yourself and you're processing and you're actually enjoying life. There's a lot of horrible stuff out there. Outside of work, you got to find the good, even if it's within your 4 walls at home.
Oh my gosh. Brianna, that is a wealth of information that you just gave everybody. And I hope y'all will go back and kind of re-listen to what she just said, because that summary is so good that it's really about those connections. There's a lot of different things. I love that you mentioned like working off duty. I was talking to some parents Tuesday and they were saying, "Oh, we've decided to limit the amount of extracurricular activities that our kids do because what we realize is that it's burning us out
Mhm.
and burning them out. And what's really important is that time we spend together,
Mhm.
not all the doing,
Mhm.
right?" And I think a lot of parents are like, "Well, I'm not there, so I've got to go up and spend money."
Mhm.
And I love that you just encapsulated everything that's so important. And not just for the kids, but for the first responders as well as for our law enforcement or our first responders that are needing those hugs, needing that emotional outlet, needing that connection that is so healing,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
It's okay to want to come home and hug your kids. It's okay to come home and have a tear shed, not just because you had to deal with a drowning call that reminded you of your kid, but just
Mhm.
because you missed your kid. We forget, we watch little boys have emotions and hugs and cry and they see their friends and they're so ecstatic. And then we lose that in males as they grow up and they feel like they have to have this tough exterior. Don't. Call your friends up, have fun, be okay with showing your emotions, and work will be more enjoyable. And you'll just notice it kind of starts to have a trickle down effect when you take care of yourself with your kids, with your family, and it goes everywhere outside of that too.
Brianna, how do people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you? I know that you therapeutically are not taking a whole lot of new people. I read that on your website, but I know you do some presentations and want to grow that some.
Mhm.
How do people get a hold of you if they want to maybe have you come out and talk to their department or do a webinar with you?
Mhm.
What would they need to do?
So easiest way to reach me is going to be by email, which is Brianna at northernlightstherapyaz.com. So yeah, so clinically I am licensed in Arizona. I'm working on a couple other states right now, but not drastically looking to fill up a caseload. I do presentations, I do trainings, I'll do webinars. Every single thing that I've done too, I custom create. So I don't have a sugar coated cookie cutter kind of presentation that I give because I really tailor it to the department, the group that I'm speaking with, whatever, to really match what they've got going on. So I can do all of that. I can put on trainings. I've created workbooks. I mean, you kind of name it. It's a one-stop shop that I'll do everything custom from the ground up. My practice, we've got 3 locations and 26 clinicians that work with birth all the way up through adults, couples, families, the whole gamut. So
Wow.
we've really got a whole in-house. So if there's other aspects that need to be added to it, I've got a wealth of knowledge from all of my team as well that we can combine things.
That is fantastic. I know you're a great resource. And you're FOP certified as well,
Yes.
which I know a lot of people are trying to get FOP certified, which I love that they have taken the initiative
Mhm.
to say, hey, we vetted these people and they are
Mhm.
good. So y'all know that she's after listening to her, but then also knowing that FOP has said,
Mhm.
hey, she and her practice are quality. And so I love that you custom create things. So guys, if y'all need, I know there's a lot of grants out there right now. If you're looking for somebody to come and talk about family stuff, Brianna's available to do that. And I will put her contact information also in the show notes below. And while you are on your device, if you would maybe give me a thumbs up or write a review, or, if you know somebody else that would love this because you're like, holy crap, she just said all the right things. And you're like, I'm going to forward this to some other people because they need to know how to deal with their kids. Do that. Part of the reason why I do this is because I want to make an impact. My guests come on because they want to make an impact in our community. And so what you are doing is you are sharing that impact. It's a ripple, it's a wave. So let's continue to do that. If there is somebody that you can share this with, please do. Brianna, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and your
Thank you.
willingness to do this. Absolutely.
And anybody that's listening, you can email me even if you have a quick question. I promise you, I like to get emails. I like to help. You don't have to be a client. You don't need to have me come out and do a whole training. If you have just a quick question, you can absolutely email me. My website, while I'm still adding pages, we have a ton of resource areas to it, book recommendations, websites, blogs, articles. I literally just wrote about the importance of vacation yesterday on my blog. And so taking time to kind of take care of yourself. So all of that's on there. So yeah, anything. This has been amazing. I appreciate you letting me come on for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Guys, y'all stay safe. And until next time, keep it code 4. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about the podcast or Cindy, check out code4couples.com. All intellectual property rights owned by CRLD2 Ventures, LLC, are protected by the firm of 9mm, 45 ACP, 5.56mm, and 12 gauge.